everyone. You're listening to The Future of Food Is You, a production of the Cherry Bombe Podcast Network. I'm your host, Abena Anim-Somuah, and each week I talk to emerging talents in the food world, and they share what they're up to, as well as their dreams and predictions for what's ahead. I love this new generation of chefs, bakers, and creatives making their way in the world of food, drink, media, and tech. Today's guest is Amber Mayfield Hewett, the party planner, entrepreneur, and entertaining expert behind the companies To Be Hosted and While Entertaining Media. Amber and I talk about the recent gala she hosted, bringing together Black creatives in the culinary world, and what it's like launching a media company at such a young age. She's all about creating mood boards, challenging your own ideas, and creating joy for joy's sake, which I love. Stay tuned for our chat. If you're an aspiring magazine collector, you need to check out Cherry Bombe. Each issue is thick and lush and celebrates women and culinary creatives via gorgeous photography and great stories and recipes. Whether you collect magazines, read them and pass them along to your friends, or cut them up for your vision boards or collages, you'll love Cherry Bombe. You can find Cherry Bombe wherever indie magazines are sold. Places like Shop Crota in Grass Valley, California, Kitchen Arts and Letters in New York City, and Moon Palace Books in Minneapolis. Or visit cherrybombe.com to order an issue today. Now let's check in with today's guest. Amber, thank you so much for joining us on The Future of Food Is You.
Thank you for having me, Abena.
Can you tell us where you grew up and how did food show up in your life?
I grew up in Rockland County, New York, in a small town called Nanuet. Food was always a part of gathering and just having barbecues and family gatherings. So I always loved holidays because I knew my mom was going to cook our favorites and really spend time in the kitchen in a way that we didn't always during the week because me and my brother were athletes and we were always involved in activities. So it's kind of go, 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 eat really healthy. Maybe we're all sitting down together. Maybe we're not.
What are some signature Mama Mayfield things definitely asking for at the table?
Oh, she has so many good things. She makes really good ribs, really good mac and cheese, which is a recipe from my grandmother.
Love that.
Sweet potato casserole is really good too. So those are the ones that I'm okay, I got to go home and get some of that.
Yeah. So let's fast forward a little bit. You started off your career in one of the most prestigious start your career jobs. You were a page at NBC Universal, and you later became an assistant working at Bravo. What were some of the highlights of that experience?
What a time that was. I think for me, the main highlight was all of the people that I met. Some of my dearest friends and some of my first clients were all people that I was pages with or met while I was a page or met while working at Bravo. So I think I'm most proud of just coming out of that with such a strong community of women who get it.
Yeah.
And know how to build things and know how to get things done. I mean, it was a cool place to work. It was, checking off one of the boxes on your dreams. But I think I'm just most proud of all the great people I met there.
Yeah. Were you with the daily shows or were you with the night shows? What was your...
Oh, gosh. So the page program is really interesting and it has evolved so much since I was in it. But you get to bounce around and do everything. So I remember being a page helping with the live shows for Late Night and Saturday Night Live and the Today Show. But then a lot of my assignments were more corporate jobs because that 30 Rock building has so many different brands housed within it. So I worked in corporate social responsibility. I did an events assignment there and I did USA Network. So it was all very different marketing and event related jobs and kind of gave me that inkling that maybe this is the direction I want to go.
Yeah, that's awesome. It's you get to work, but you also get to figure out, what you want to do next. Well, since we like to talk about food on the show, I have to ask, were there any food requests that were made at the time as a page? Was there any food that you had to get for someone?
Yeah, no, those requests were always really interesting. But honestly, the thing that was always fascinating to me was there was this commissary kitchen where anybody in the building could go get something to eat during the day. And so I remember standing in the sandwich line. I was looking at my phone, just kind of minding my business, waiting for this line to go. And all of a sudden I heard this man ordering this very I think I'll have the turkey sandwich today. And maybe we'll add a bit of lettuce. And I looked up and it's Lester Hall ordering a sandwich in the voice.
Oh my gosh.
And I'm that is unreal. So I never forgot that.
That's hilarious. You feel a presence in the room and you look up.
Wow,
you
sound like
that. He would
and
order.
I'll also have a turkey sandwich.
While you were working at Bravo, you began your side hustle with the Supper Club concept series, which you called To Be Hosted.
Mm-hmm.
Why did you believe that this was the format for a community gathering?
Yeah, so To Be Hosted's humble beginnings is very two-pronged. I think the first is that I was going to all these networking events that were quite awful, right? Like people just exchanged business cards and kind of moved on.
Yeah.
And so with a dinner party, you're sitting next to that person for 2 hours. You're either going to have a great time or it's going to be absolutely terrible. And I wanted to make it not terrible, right? Mm-hmm. So I started doing them as this way to just meet the other kids that were working in the industry and like explore just anything that you could really imagine. Like I had an all teachers dinner, an all music dinner. Like there are so many different ways that you can get interesting people to the table in that format. It came out of this necessity to want to network. It also came out of this necessity to have a job. So while I was there, I had already kind of got this inkling that I wanted to work in events, but there weren't very many entry-level event jobs. I was applying to dozens and dozens of jobs. I made it to the final interview rounds for like some incredible dream jobs. I never quite landed because I didn't have like traditional event experience.
Yeah.
And so with To Be Hosted, I'm like, well, I can just start planning events and I'll get that traditional event experience. And then it just kind of rolled out of control between having the supper clubs and then having other people ask me to plan their parties. I never quite made it into another job. It just became my job.
Yeah. Something that I loved reading and researching about is how a lot of that was also rooted in finding other Black people and people of color to commune with. Why did you think that was really important to really kind of be clear about and really let that be a core of the earliest dinner parties?
Yeah, I think being niche is something that people usually shy away from, but I just never did. I think specificity is king. When I was looking at the other supper clubs that existed during that time or didn't exist during that time, I was like, this is what makes me different and my interests different. And so that's something that I should pursue. And it became this space where I can give opportunities to chefs that weren't being invited to do the dinner parties and kind of help them build their street cred too. So It just made a lot of sense.
I love that. That's really awesome. Someone who loves hosting dinner parties, there's always a story. There's always a snafu. Are there any highlights that you remember from some of the first dinners that you threw?
Oh, man, the first dinners, they were all snafus. I think I learned so much from those first dinners because of the trial and error, like choosing spaces that didn't have kitchens or didn't have back of house spaces or didn't even have lights on dimmers. I think a lot of those early dinners taught me what I wanted to do and not do with my events to make them feel special and accessible and just make sense. So I wouldn't say there was any like terrible incidents, but there was just always little nuggets of like, okay, this time I'm going to do this better. And I just collected that over time until I kind of established this To Be Hosted way of doing dinner parties.
When did you know that you were ready to make, To Be Hosted a full-time gig?
Oh, goodness. So I think it's really important to caveat my situation because I was 23 years old at the time. I was working at a corporate company. I had roommates. I was paying like $900 for rent. I was still on my parents' insurance. And so I think all of those things made it very easy to leap because I was like, if I fall, I can very easily go back to a corporate assistant job. I can, I don't have to pay for insurance out of pocket. I'm still under 26. There wasn't much that I had to be afraid of anyway. So I always like to start with that to not romanticize, like, let's all quit our corporate jobs and like be entrepreneurs. That's not quite what we should do. So for me, I think it became a point of, okay, I can no longer take phone calls in the closet or sneak away from, I couldn't do both. And if I wanted to see To Be Hosted grow and not suffer, then I had to make the leap of like, okay, I've got this much money saved up. This is what my living expenses are. I'm giving myself these 3 to 6 months to make something shake, or I need to go get a side job of some sort. And I think that reckless pursuit of the thing that I really wanted and putting myself on that very short deadline of like, this has to work or you're going back is what helped me make it work.
You've had To Be Hosted for 7 years. Congratulations.
Thank you.
And it's a full service event agency that specializes in dinner parties, salon events, and celebrations. For those of us who are uninitiated to the wonderful works of To Be Hosted, can you tell us a little bit about the services that you're offering with each type of event you're hosting?
Yeah, I think it can be described in a nutshell of, we're party planners and we do a lot of parties that surround food and beverage, but we do parties that can surround lifestyle clients, fashion clients, any sort of clientele. As long as there's something that is good to celebrate and that we believe in, we can take somebody's vision and really bring it to life, from the very beginning to the actual event and how it all comes together and executing everything. So it's a very involved job, but it's a job I love quite a bit. Our team now has 5 people, including me, and so we can kind of really take people from some really great idea that they have to like, oh, this is how it shows up in real life, whether that's a dinner party or a screening or a cocktail party or, you know, any sort of thing. That I think it's just been really fun to be creative and kind of pick up different little worlds and be like, okay, I'm learning everything I need to learn about this particular book or this particular video project. And now how does this live in an event? And then I can switch to something else. So that part is cool.
Parties are such an important part of society, and I'm sure you've drawn inspiration from lots of ideas. But I would love to know, who are 3 people that you think inspire and ground the work that you do with To Be Hosted?
Oh gosh, there's so many, but I think the first one, of course, is B. Smith. I think if she didn't exist, I really wouldn't exist. I wouldn't be able to see a life that is built around conviviality and lifestyle in a way that's not, you know, servitude. So I'm very, very, very inspired by her work and her disposition about event planning.
B. Smith being the restaurateur and entrepreneur who is so important to Black entertaining and Black celebration.
It's a lot of B. Smith. It's a lot of Layla Walker. I think, you know, she was very prominent during the Harlem Renaissance and like throwing these parties that you read about them or you hear people speak about them. They just seem like these really lavish gatherings. But then when you really get into it, it's like, no, she was creating a space for Black excellence to be safe and be celebrated during a time when that was not quite what the vibe was. So I really appreciate her.
Yeah, I just read the piece in the New York Times about the rent parties that they used to throw during the Harlem Renaissance, and I'm like, maybe we should bring those back, you know.
With the way rent prices are now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But that ingenuity inspired me. So that, I mean, I guess that can be, you know, my third option here. I know it's not an individual person, but it's a time period when you can see how the parties and the creativity around parties were helping people pay their rent and establish community. Like there is a space where parties can be this very fulfilling and very meaningful environment beyond just, you know, the frivolous things that we think they are at first glance.
Yeah. You just hosted one of I call it your flagship events, your WE Gala, which is a celebration of Black talent and excellence in the culinary scene. I mean, I unfortunately couldn't make it, but I felt like everyone who I knew was there enjoying Nana Wilmot's jollof. You know, I think Arya from Haven Morrow did something amazing there as well. Congratulations. I know that was a feat. I want to understand your process of bringing an event from concept to real life. So could you walk us through a little bit of the process of how this year's gala came together?
Yes. So our annual WE Gala is really a celebration of Black culture in food and beverage spaces. So we know that we are entertaining an audience that are chefs or beverage professionals or writers or just really, really big food enthusiasts. That is definitely where we want to try every new format or every new idea, because this is the audience that's going to, you know, determine all the trends. So that event this year had about 120 people. We hosted it at a restaurant in New York here, Haven Mar. And it was a really interesting thing to imagine how we were going to create this big table, we're all in this together experience across a restaurant where everybody is actually spread out.
Yeah.
So we put a lot into like what the actual floor plan would be, how many people we could have at the same table, where everybody was going to sit in a way that they felt like they were within arm's reach of the people that they would enjoy being near. We spent a lot of time talking to Chef Nana and Faryal and Janae just about what the menu was going to be and how that was going to live in an environment where people are very, very dressed up. So it might not, you know, doing family style while also doing like evening wear is kind of a challenge. Like, how are we going to plate everything? Prom. Yeah, exactly. How are we going to plate everything in a way that just feels elegant and feels easy to access? So it was a lot of logistics, a lot of communication, and a lot of meetings trying to figure out how can we do this in a restaurant format and make it cool.
You also mentioned Janae Kaikai, who is of Pella Kitchen, another Future Food Is You guest alum, which is so awesome to see. To Be Hosted, there's so much detail into it, and also bringing a lot of people into the fold, making sure that everyone's kind of on the same page and able to do their thing and do it really well. I know you partner with a lot of brands and a lot of chefs on this. How do you think about the communication between, you know, other people that aren't necessarily in your brain but are playing a big role in the whole process?
I mean, I love getting people on the phone.
No texting.
I mean, I'll answer the text message, but I'm like so quick when I text that it can almost feel like, ooh, does Amber like me? Should I send an emoji? So I just love to call people and be like, okay, let's just hash this out. Give me your perspective about this idea. Because again, if I don't vet all my ideas through the people I want to partner with, and they don't tell me, like, I think this is a terrible idea, or I think you need to consider X, Y, and Z, then it's going to go wrong. So I really like to keep an open line of communication with everybody that we work with. So in that regard, I just always hope that they're, nice and friendly and warm, and usually they are. Having clearly defined terms and emails and contracts are the starting base. And then scheduling calls throughout the production process to make sure that we're communicating clearly about what our vision is. And then that they also feel very heard in the process, because I do think of them as partners and not, just puppets. So we have to really build a rapport that feels like, oh, I'm in this too.
Yeah.
And I think we do a really good job of that as a team to kind of make everybody feel like they're part of our little family.
Yeah, I love that. That's so cute. Get on the phone.
Yeah, get on the phone. Call people.
Get on the horn. To Be Hosted has partnered with lots of brands like, Equinox, Soho House, YouTube. And this is just a very small list of all the incredible brands you've worked out with. What is your approach to partnerships when you're working with corporations who have their own identities and their own brands to think about creating experiences?
I'm really keen on doing things that bring me joy and working with people that I really, really like. So I think everything goes through that funnel first of like, do I actually like this brand? Do I actually like the people that are talking to me? Do I want to, be in this planning process with them for X amount of weeks or X amount of months? And as long as those answers are always yes, the work product is better. So I really do approach everything with just how do we get along? How do we align? Are we mission aligned? And are they interested and adaptable to the things that we care about? I really admire that everybody that we work with, if we call them out about diversity and equity, they hear us. If they do something or they have, an approach or a communication style that we're like, it's not doing quite well, they're really open to hearing it and having those tough conversations with us and then working beyond that. I only work with people that we really, really love. And that has been such a blessing, really.
Yeah. And that's a good signal, too, where it shows you have worked with so many brands, but behind the scenes, it's you're really, really thinking about, do I want to have a good time? Do I like them? Can I even create something exciting with them?
So and do I want to advocate for them? Because that's what partnerships suggest. That I believe in you and you believe in me. So, that's got to be there in the foundation.
Yeah. Okay, we're huge manifestors on the podcast, and I know you are quite a manifestor as well. Are there any dream brands or people you'd love to plan a party for?
Yes.
Say it with your chest.
I really want to plan a party for Rihanna. I hear she's quite the foodie, and I think that would be really interesting to blend what she's doing with Fenty and what she does with her music and some sort of really cool, immersive experience. Rihanna, as soon as you need me, I'll send you my number. And then I would say 2 Chainz, honestly. I used to love watching the episodes of 2 Chainz Most Expensivest. He used to have it on YouTube. I think eventually it got picked up by somebody, but the YouTube versions were just A1 editing, A1 research went into them. And I think it would be really fun to do a Most Expensivest dinner party. And I think he can, be the Snoop to my Martha.
Wow. That's iconic. Okay, this is the beginning of a beautiful friendship.
Exactly.
Yeah, the most beautifulest friendship. I love that so much. When it comes to planning, I planned so many events. I did stuff in college, planned parties in high school. How do you and your team think about the logistics to make sure everyone is fed well and that there's enough to drink? I'm always curious how party planners think about this.
Well, we're, a very food-first agency, so I think about it often.
It's all she thinks about.
Yeah, it might be all I think about. I have to remember to, hire the DJ.
At least he'll have food when he comes.
Exactly. Yeah. No, there'll definitely be a plate for her. Most of our DJs are women.
I love that.
So I think today you have to be very cognizant of different dietary restrictions and different preferences around spirits. So I always approach it looking at the variety of a menu and how we can ensure that everybody can get a bite, whether, you're gluten-free or you're vegetarian or you're vegan or you're I don't want any alcohol and making sure that those non-alcoholic options are exciting and not an afterthought. I really look at who's coming, what their food, dietary restrictions and allergies and things like that at the top, and then what their like cultural norms are around food. Do they feel good about shared plates? Do they feel good about a raw bar? Like all of those things kind of inform what we'll recommend, because I think making people comfortable and making sure everybody gets a bite of something that they love the moment they walk in is like how to knock it out of the park on every event.
Yeah, I love that. I always have had this thought, but sometimes when you're at a party and it's like you're standing and then the food and stuff comes, do you think there's ever a world where we'll figure out the dance of holding the wine glass or the whatever glass and get the food? I don't know.
Well, I think about the people busing and making sure they're very present, because I think people holding on to like the little toothpicks, that is very annoying. And then I also think about how many high tops are in the area so that you have somewhere that you can sit something down comfortably. And then I think about just like how easy is that item of food to eat. I think there are a lot of cool pass apps that are out there, but some of them are not. They need like 2 or 3 or 4 bites. And I'm just like, that's not going to work. Or, this piece of toast is so loaded that it's about to slide off and get on somebody's dress. I really antagonize what the decisions are around the menu. And some ideas, I'm like, okay, maybe we save that for like a station or something seated, and just having a point of view that really is guest first.
I really love that. You're thinking about the science of a canapé. That's amazing.
It's none of my business. The chefs get annoyed with me, but I do think about it.
In 2020, you launched While Entertaining, which I would consider the second arm of your...
Yeah, like the media extension.
Yes, the media, exactly, which is a food media destination from the lens of home entertaining. And I love that you make highlighting Black chefs, again, a core mission of this work. Why do you think this representation matters, particularly in the media landscape?
Well, I think before Black Square Summer, it was very much a February, you get a listicle. And I don't think that is what I'm about. So I really wanted a space where we were consistently sharing these stories. Yes, we're sharing them with beautiful recipes or beautiful design, but there are like real people attached to them, and real people that you can feel like or have the intrigue to hire for your event or the intrigue to go to their restaurant. And so my hope with that platform has always been to just continue to introduce people to new voices consistently in a way that will impact change in their lives.
And you've since published 5 volumes of While Entertaining. And thank you. I was so honored that you asked me to write a piece on one of my favorite desserts, and the theme's all about love. How did you decide on that theme? And then what were some of the highlights of the editorial process?
Yeah, I do a lot of my work around how I'm feeling. And I think the past year of my life was so surrounded by love. I got married.
Congratulations. Your wedding was stunning.
Thank you. So there was a lot of romantic love, but there was also just a lot of like friends. Our first and our best relationships are with our friends. And I think I just kind of looked around and I was like, I kind of love it here, Like I'm surrounded by people that I really love, and I'm doing the work that I really love. And so those things just kept coming up in my mind that I was like, maybe this should be a theme for a magazine, because if I feel this way, it might be interesting to see how other folks are processing love, because it didn't have to be based on relationships. So some people wrote about ingredients, some people wrote about family members, some people did write about romantic relationships. Krista Barfield wrote about her love of soil, which was like so fascinating to hear from a farmer in that way. It really just opened the door to see how people are processing and appreciating the things around them in a new way.
Party planning and magazines are probably very similar in terms of getting your line book already, the types of people that you need. You're working with different people.
Detail-oriented.
No typos. No, got a good copy editor. What are some lessons you've learned from creating editorial content that you think will help with the party planning side of the business?
I think it just deepened my attention to detail and like how things can be really beautiful in person, but they might not translate in photographs. And so what you need to change on site to make sure that they translate to folks who were not at the event but are experiencing it through photo and video. I feel like that has been one of the main lessons, or like crossovers, if you will.
I know the magazine's primarily written by freelancers. You write some stuff, I'm sure some of your staff members at To Be Hosted write stuff as well. I know a lot of our guests are ambitious writers wanting to get their bylines in a lot of different magazines. What do you look for in people who potentially want to write for you or contribute to the magazine?
So our magazines aren't necessarily by writers. Nobody's a writer. I think this was our first year that we had like a writer. But everybody
it's like people who happen to write and do other things. Okay,
yeah. So they're mostly chefs, farmers, beverage producers. That's what I think is interesting about the magazine, is that you get somebody that you usually only get a couple quotes from in an article to now write you a couple of paragraphs and a couple of pages. So you kind of get to hear from them a little bit more than you would in a traditional interview format. And you also just get like really truthful, raw writing. Like they all write their pieces themselves. So you are really hearing from Terrence Harvey, who's the executive sous chef at the James Beard platform space. Like you are really hearing from him for the first time in media in the way that he showed up in the magazine. It's hard to say because I really do choose folks based on like the work that they're doing and then if they have time to write something.
I think that's great. It seems like you want people who are doing the work. Writing about food is also work, but I think you want people that are more in there, who their primary focus is to create a beverage, make a meal, share something, which I respect. You announced a few months ago that you are working on your first book. Congratulations.
Thank you.
You are publishing it with Artisan Books, which is so exciting. Can you tell us about the concept of the book?
Essentially, the book is going to dive into my party planning process, but of course do so in a lens that you can recreate at home. So it really gives like a lot of my tips and tricks and sources for inspiration. And I really wanted it to be beautiful and practical. So I want to show a couple of parties that can serve as inspiration for folks, but then I also want to have templates and how-tos and step-by-step guides so that like everything that has become part of like the To Be Hosted way or just like my approach as a party planner will now live in this source. Instead of picking my brain, you can pick up a copy of my book.
Oh, there it is. That better be somewhere in your promotional copy.
There you go.
I love that. Can you give us a sneak peek of a recipe or two that we should look for?
I mean, it really is a lot more about party planning. So I would say that the recipes are more like
guides.
Yeah, they're guides, but then they're recipes for like how to do something, like a recipe for a good toast or like, you know, and not like toast that you eat, like making a good party
Keep
toast.
it short.
Yeah, like be brief. But no, beyond that, like how do I actually, you know, seam things together in a way that like serves as a rallying cry for a party, right? Like it gives it that kind of intention and feeling that you want to go for. So it's a lot of that type of stuff.
Love it. It's a recipe for success.
Yeah, there you go.
I love that. Obviously, we're staying on the manifesting track. You know, we've got a party with Rihanna, but I like to ask dream recipients for the book. If you could send your presser over to anyone, who would it be?
Oh, is that a thing?
I mean, we're manifesting. Let's not get stalkerish.
Sent to anyone besides Rihanna.
She's already got the book because she read the book and then
right. Rihanna has the book.
She planned the party.
Chainz has the book.
Yeah, they're good.
Beyonce has to have the book.
Say less.
I don't know. I want everyone to have it. I think whoever is going to use it and appreciate it should have it. Beyond just like big celebrities, I'm manifesting that like lots and lots of people want to hear what I have to say.
Anyone, everyone. That book should be on every kitchen shelf counter in America.
That's all
and
I
the
ask.
world. So there we go. Hosting events a lot means you really have to turn it on for guests so they can enjoy an event while you're constantly thinking about what's next, thinking one step ahead of everyone. But I would love to ask you, what do you like to do when you're not hosting? How do you like to entertain yourself outside of work?
Yeah, I mean, To Be Hosted was really just a whole plot to do the things that I really like to do, which is hosting parties or hanging out with my friends and eating really good food and listening to really good music. I think that is still what I do when I'm not working. Like, I like to go try new restaurants. I like to try new recipes. I like to hang out with my friends, hang out with my husband, hang out with my family. Yeah, I really love gathering. If I am not gathering, if I gotta like, you know, my social battery is dying and I need to be by myself, I do love television, which makes a lot of sense for how I started my career. So I watch everything. I always say I will watch an episode of anything once, at least. Like I will give anything a try. And so because of that, I have to finish things.
Because you started. Yeah, respect.
So I end up watching like a ton of shows.
Okay. What's a show you've loved recently?
that I love right now for sure is Shogun on FX, because I think the history is fascinating. It's set in Japan in the 1500s, and I think learning about a lot of their cultural traditions and history and just the detail that has gone into that show is really inspiring and also just fascinating. Like, I'm learning a ton, and I'm really enjoying that show. So I'm watching that, and I mean, I feel like I run the gamut on television shows. I also decided recently to rewatch the show called Revenge that came out in like 2011 with like Emily Van Camp. It was like this, this girl that wanted to avenge her father being wrongfully accused of embezzlement or something like that, and then he ended up being murdered. And so she comes back to the Hamptons to haunt all these people and play all these tricks on them just to like clear her father's name. And I started watching that because I was having a conversation with somebody about how revenge plot shows don't usually hit. Like, I thought that apple falls from the tree. I was very annoyed with how that ended. And so then I went back and started watching Revenge.
Yeah, I love that. That's awesome.
I might go back and watch Scandal too. But
oof, yeah, I just finished Scandal, but that's amazing. Well, Amber, it seems like you are looking at Black excellence and entertaining for Black communities in such interesting perspectives, from the event planning to the food media to the print perspective as well. When you look at all of this, how do you think about the future of representation for Black people in the culinary space?
I mean, I feel like it's very lofty to say that I feel good about it just based on my own work, because I think there's a ton of people doing the work and there's a ton more work to do. But I think as long as we continue to have people who are passionate about the stories that they tell and how those stories, show up, I think I hope we're looking brighter.
And then how do you hope your work as an entertaining expert inspires others? Truth be told, when you think of the party planning space, it's very white. When you think of the top performing party planners in the city. But I also think, for me, some of the best celebrations I've had have been in rooms with colorful people. Like, my mom is a pro party planner. She used to I know, she would always when friends would come over after school, I'm like, how did you get all those ingredients into this meal on the table? So I'm really curious to hear how you think your work will inspire a more diverse generation of party planners and people who really are creating experiences for everyone, but really rooted in themselves.
Yeah, I mean, I think I would be very flattered if my work could be that impactful. I think creating space and being in a career path that I'm passionate about, I hope it inspires other people to just pursue what their passions are and be really confident in their perspective of how you approach them. When you think about lifestyle and home entertaining magazines and this hostess with the mostest persona, there's a lot of model looking women that are in that industry, and I think that's great for them. But I also think that if we continue to value perspectives that don't fit one particular aesthetic, we will have much more interesting lives and much more interesting social experiences. So I think you should just do it, and I think you should do it your way. And I think if you have clients that tell you that you shouldn't do it that way, they shouldn't be your clients. I think you can find the right guests and the right people to have at your party that will deeply, deeply appreciate what you bring to the table. And you should just be in reckless pursuit of that.
Amber, I enjoyed this so much. I've got recommendations, we've manifested, and I'm really excited to see your work and hopefully finally get to go to one of your events very soon.
Yeah, you got to come to a party.
Yes. If we want to continue to support you, where are the best places to find you?
I'm on Instagram. If you want to follow me personally, Ambb, AMBB _MAYY. And if you want to follow my brands, @ToBeHosted and @While_Entertaining. And we're on YouTube. I have a little channel where I do a show called Soiree School where I'm giving all my tips, so that can kind of hold you over until my book comes out.
I love that. Amazing. Well, thank you so much.
Yes, thanks for having me.
Before we go, our guest is going to leave a voicemail just talking to themselves 10 years from now. You have reached the Future of Food Is You mailbox. Please leave your message after the beep.
Hey, doll. I hope you're doing well. I hope you are having so much fun with this beautiful life that you have worked very, very hard for. I hope you are living in the moment and abandoning the plan as often as you can. I hope you are still madly in love with yourself and madly in love with your partner and madly in love with the work that you do and the ability that you have to bring people together for really special things. I hope you have not lost sight of why you started and have a clear grip on where you're going. Enjoy it.
That's it for today's show. I would love for you to leave a rating and a review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to our show. The Future of Food is You is a production of the Cherry Bombe Podcast Network. Thanks to the team at CityVox Studios, executive producers Kerry Diamond and Catherine Baker, associate producers Jenna, Sadhu, and Elizabeth Vogt, and content operations manager Londyn Crenshaw. Catch you on the Future Flip.